Welcome to Into the Wormhole. I am Lauren Lowen, and I am stuck down here with my captain,
Larissa Maestro!
Yay!
Hey!
We're going to talk about some Star Trek, and we're going to have a good time doing it, like we always do.
Yeah, we are. This is all we have.
Right. As all the car commercials are telling us, these are uncertain times.
Yeah, so if you just got back from a trip around the galaxy or something, there is an international pandemic. So we're all stuck in our houses, or most of us are, at least. Lauren and I are both lucky enough to be stuck in our houses and not out in the world. But this is kind of a time, I feel like, for me, I'm diving into stuff that makes me feel comforted. And absolutely 100% Star Trek is one of those things.
Yes.
So I'm watching an extra amount of Star Trek.
And I think, Larissa, I don't know if you want to explain our kind of concept for this episode. It definitely has to do with current events.
Oh, yeah. So our concept is Star Trek self-care. So we are choosing to talk about two of our personal favorite episodes of Star Trek that we like to watch to comfort ourselves and make ourselves feel better about the world, or to escape into them because the story's so good, or to just hang out with our friends that are in these episodes.
Yeah, and Larissa picked Remember Me from TNG, and I picked The Wire from Deep Space Nine, which I'm excited to really go into Deep Space Nine. We haven't quite done a Deep Space Nine episode yet, so I really enjoy that.
We did talk about, I had a couple of fake episodes that were fake DS9 bad episodes in our teaser.
True, which sadly will never come to be, because I was really looking forward to the Bonnaroo drugs on the space station.
Oh man, that would have been excellent.
So I think we should be honest. This is actually funny. This is the second time we've recorded this episode. We recorded it exactly a week ago, only to find out that our audio screwed up because we're still trying to figure out how our setup is outside of the We Own This Town studio, which has a wonderful setup. And Larissa is a champ kind of setting up our remote subspace recording session. But we did it and it didn't quite work out. So we're doing it again.
I mean, yeah, anybody who is trying to do a podcast right now can totally relate to the problems that we're having with this.
But so the first time we recorded this, it was fun. We kind of talked about some of our, before we started the main kind of section of the podcast, we talked about some of our honorable mentions or other episodes that we like. I don't know if you want to do that again.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
I know for me, an honorable mention is, we mentioned it actually last time in our Picard 1 through 5 review, but I really enjoy Disasters, which is a TNG episode. It is basically a 90s disaster film done on the Enterprise, where this ship kind of is just dead in the water and all the characters are separated in these little story vignettes, and some of them are hilarious. Worf has to deliver Keiko's baby, and that's a very
I love that part.
Yeah, fish out of the water story. And then you have Picard, who is stuck in the turbo lift with the kids, and that's very endearing and sweet. And then you have kind of a serious storyline on the bridge, because it's Ro, Miles, and Troy, who is actually left in charge of the Enterprise, and they're trying to give her different advice about what she should do.
And then she ends up kicking ass.
Yeah, for me, that one is definitely a fun episode. Also, Data's head comes off. It's just, there's a lot of fun moments and a lot of different,
it's a wild
feelings going on.
What was that kid growing? Radishes? He's the
yes.
He's the officer
you will be
charge of radishes.
My first officer of radishes. That's one of my favorite lines.
And they grew all weird.
So that's one of mine. What about you? Like, what's another one that you were considering for this episode?
So I had Attached, because I love me some Beverly Picard intimacy exploration. And it's also just like, they're both such great actors, and you can tell they like really like each other a lot, and we're having a great time doing that episode. It's the one where they can hear each other's thoughts, and it's really so cute.
I know. I actually, when I had time when I was a little kid, that's one of the episodes that I remember, particularly the fireside chat scene between them.
And also like Patrick Stewart is like peak hotness in that episode as well. Like for me as an adult human now, as opposed to when I was watching it as a kid. And then as far as other heartwarming episodes go, Dark Page is one that I think we'll talk about in the future when we talk about Luxana. But it's about a mother-daughter relationship, and it's so sweet. It makes me cry every single time I watch it. I fucking love it. And then, like, you know, the obvious ones, like Inner Light, you know, Measure of a Man, which we talked about last episode. Like, all the like, top-notch writing
Iborg,
stuff.
like, we both.
Oh,
that's one of our favorites for both of us.
Oh, I fucking love Hugh.
And then we mentioned last time, even Deep Space Nine, even though you have the Dominion War and stuff, there's the episode where I think it's called The Magnificent Frankie. It's where Iggy Pop guest stars.
Oh, yeah!
It's basically himself in Star Trek makeup. But it's all the Ferengi characters of Deep Space Nine, including Jeffrey Combs, who has a Ferengi character, and Nog and Rom and Quark trying to save Moogie. Yeah, and it's just sort of it's a fun, wacky episode, and so that one's kind of a really fun one that you could just sort of, even if you're forget some of the details of where Deep Space Nine is at that point in the season, you can just sort of hop in and enjoy it, and you'll be fine.
It doesn't even matter.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and the other one that you mentioned was the one with Moriarty, when Moriarty comes back.
Yes, Ship in the Bottle, which the first, I think it's like Elementary Dear Data. That's the first time we meet him. But the episode, the follow-up episode, Ship in the Bottle, is really good. And I love it because it had me fooled until they revealed like the twist, which we won't get into here. But that would be another one that I think, you know, later when we do like a holodeck episode or something, that'd be a fun one to touch upon.
Well, do you want to start with mine? You want to start with
Remember Me? I feel like yours is an appropriate one to start with before we get into mine.
Okay, so I'll just do a little recap. A lot goes on in this episode, so I'll do my best.
I believe in you, by the way.
This is TNG season 4, episode 5, and in this episode, the first thing we see is Beverly is welcoming her old friend and mentor, Dr. Dalen Quace, onto the Enterprise. They're stopped at a starbase, and he's catching a ride with them, and it's so cute, walking down the hallway, chatting, and she says, sorry to hear about your wife who just recently passed away, and then he starts talking about how once you get older, your friends and family start to die, and then you feel like you didn't really give them the time that you wished that you had when they were around you. And this gets her kind of sad, and so after she drops him off at his quarters, she goes to visit Wesley in engineering. And it's so mom, and it's so cute because she just shows up, and Wesley's like being a teenager genius, running an experiment with a static warp bubble. And he's like, Mom, what are you doing here? And she's like, don't let me interrupt you. And it's so cute because she might
as well have a sandwich in her hand and be like, I brought you a sandwich in case you're hungry. I'll leave it here.
Wesley, I'll just leave it here on this console. It's so cute. So something weird happens with the experiment. There's a little flash of light, and they fix it, and they figure out how to make it stop or whatever. And then Wesley turns around, and his mom's gone. But then we cut directly to her going back to see her friend, Dr. Dalen Quace, and he's nowhere to be found. He's not in his quarters. All of his stuff is gone, and she freaks out and calls Worf, because that's what you do. And Worf's like, I don't remember this guy. And she's like, he's my friend. He came on. I sent a request in. It's whatever. And he's like, yeah, but his stuff's gone. Like, I don't know. Okay, we'll look for him. And then they go to see O'Brien, which is where he was obviously transported onto the ship. And O'Brien's like, what? I don't remember that. You just came in here and you were like, thanks. And I was like, okay. And nobody remembers him. But all of the crew is like, we're going to do our best to find him. We're going to figure it out. Meanwhile, people just start disappearing left and right. Beverly's entire staff disappears, and she's like, everyone's gone. And the rest of the crew that remain are like, no, they're not. We're supposed to only have 300 people on the ship.
Yeah, Beverly's the only one who's noticing all these disappearances.
Yes, she's the only one that remembers any of these people. We get whittled down to eventually when it's just Beverly and Picard. And they're sitting on the bridge, and he's like, this is normal. And she's like, this is not normal. And she has a beautiful speech. And then he disappears. And so she's like alone on the Enterprise. So she tries to figure out what's going on. And the rest of the episode is really just like Beverly trying to figure out what the fuck is happening. And then finally we cut back to engineering with Wesley and Geordi. And she's been stuck in the static warp bubble this entire time. And they're trying to get her out. So, and this is my least favorite part of the episode, but the Traveler shows up, helps Wesley with the Force, and they get her out of the bubble through this vortex, which she's been avoiding, which has showed up a few times inside the bubble, but she's been avoiding it because it's fucking scary. And then she jumps through it and everything's fine. So basically what happened was whatever she was thinking at the moment she was absorbed into this warp bubble is going to inform what the world is that she's existing in. And she was imagining all of her friends and family around her not being there anymore and how she would miss them and stuff. So it's really sweet. It's very tender. And also just like Gates McFadden is a fucking force of nature. She's so good in this episode because most of it she's acting by herself. She's just
she
talking
has
to
to
herself.
carry a lot of it.
Yeah. And she's brilliant. She's great. Not everyone can just like have a scene where they're totally alone and it's totally believable and compelling. And she's able to just nail it every time. So this episode is just like a whole lot of fun for me, with the exception of the Traveler, which we will talk about in a second.
Yes.
Not
We'll definitely
my
get to
favorite
that.
thing. But yeah,
But
so
you're a huge Beverly fan, though.
if I had to choose a doctor to be my doctor, it would be Beverly. She always puts other people first. So like that's what I want in my doctor. I want her to be really cool. She should be able to dance really well. And also like just rock a blue coat, you know?
Yes.
But yes,
she does a good job at that.
Bev's my doctor.
I also have on my notes, one of my first notes for this episode is just like good hair episode. Not that we want to reduce her to that, but
no. Her wigs are great.
Are they wigs?
They're wigs.
Really?
Yes.
How did you find that out?
I just being a nerd and watching a like an STLV panel, and she was like, "They're wigs."
Why were they wigs?
I don't know. I think maybe for continuity.
Maybe she was just working on other projects.
Yeah, I guess.
Just keep it
the same. They look great.
Yeah. I mean, this. I'm surprised because I mean, there's a lot of people. If you look at them, especially like Troy and even Worf.
Yes.
You know, their hair changes, and you can kind of tell what season it is by the hair.
Yeah.
But Beverly's changes quite a bit, so I'm kind of surprised to hear their wigs, just because I didn't think they would drastically change so much between all the seasons.
Yeah.
And cut and color.
Yeah, totally.
Welcome to Star Trek Hair Talk.
Star Trek Hair Talk, where we only talk about hair.
We could
hair.
Probably pull that off, though. Just FYI.
We should totally just
We've talked about it a lot in the last few episodes.
With just conversations about hair. We'll get one of our hairdresser friends on the show to talk about it. I love it. But yeah, she looks fantastic. I mean, she's fit. She's a dancer and she's graceful, and her face looks like Morgan Fairchild a little bit. She's got incredible cheekbones,
and she still is. I think
gorgeous.
In the last year, I've actually seen pictures of her just in the last year at conventions, and I mean, she's a stunning woman to begin with, but she's such a attractive older woman too. She's just aging so gracefully and letting her hair go gray naturally.
I love that.
it's beautiful, and
Yes.
I'm just like props,
Yeah.
lady.
Like, I hope that I aged that gracefully. Like her, I feel like Emmylou Harris is like in the same camp, like just letting it go gray and looking stunning.
And she's working it.
Yeah, she's killing it. So into it. Well, for me, this episode, the reason why I love it so much is pretty much Gates McFadden.
Yeah,
I just want to hang out with Gates McFadden. For both of us, the episodes we chose, we're like, we just like really want to hang out with this character, and we love this character so much. And both of these episodes really give us that chance. Like, it's just, I mean, Beverly is in every single scene in this episode.
Pretty much,
Yeah,
except like a few where it's the other side, and
yeah,
they're trying to figure out how to pull her back. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is a Beverly episode, just like mine, as we'll talk about, is a Garak episode, and that is definitely why I watch it.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I will say, too, that I recently had a nightmare in which all of my friends and family were disappearing. And it was scary. And then I woke up and I realized that it was this episode of Star Trek.
Which made you feel kind of better.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Star
it
Trek.
was comforting. Because, I mean, I was feeling that way because, like, we're in the middle of this pandemic and it's really scary. And I have some friends who are working on the front lines in healthcare and stuff, and friends that do have to go back to work because they have essential jobs, and I worry about them. And I have older parents and I worry about them. So it was definitely like, you know, my brain sorting through those feelings, but it was also my brain sorting through those feelings and then connecting them with something I love, which is Star Trek. And then when I woke up and I realized that that was why this dream turned out the way it did, I was like, oh, good. Brain, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about it, because I mean, this episode for another person could be kind of the wrong episode to watch during this pandemic. It is kind of disturbing in that way.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, but for me, like, I just get to hang out with Beverly Crusher the whole time. So, and just watch her be really smart and really logical and really scientific and figure out this like really crazy problem, because she wouldn't be able to get out of there if she hadn't figured it out. Like, it wouldn't matter how much they were trying to open up that vortex for her to jump through. If she didn't figure out what it was, she would end up smushed in there, you know?
Yeah.
So this is all like Beverly saves herself in a way in this episode.
Oh, yeah. And I definitely have thoughts about that. I feel like before we get into the end with the Traveler and Wesley, I'll just start by kind of rewinding a little bit and saying what I really enjoy about this episode is that it's kind of a Star Trek mystery episode.
Yes.
Where you might think that Beverly kind of very early on is talking about someone who's boarded this ship, and like you said, like Worf is sort of questioning, like, well, even if they got lost or they fell down and injured themselves, why is their luggage gone? Those are moments that I feel like another show would just be like, Beverly, go lie down. I think you've worked too many hours. And
totally.
they believe,
like, you're being a little crazy right now.
Yeah. Oh, Beverly. So even though they bring up kind of points, which I think is kind of smart for the viewer's sake, to be like, yeah, we thought about that. You know, they believe Beverly, and it's not until this goes way far, until just her and Picard, that Picard is like, I've entertained your thoughts, you know, enough. Like, now we gotta kind of settle down. And so
and
it
the
goes
best part
down.
about that is that, like, then it's so obvious that he is being completely unreasonable. Like,
yes.
Like, there's no way that logically two people can run the flagship of the Federation by themselves. That's supposed to have a crew complement of 1,000+ people. Like, there's just, like, he sounds ridiculous. It's not, she knows it's not her.
Yeah, and thank goodness they do that, because, I mean, truly, that's a big part of the episode, is this sort of mystery and what's going on. And if they spent the whole episode on her side of things, which is no one believing her and everyone just assuming she's going crazy, then what are you supposed to do? You're just supposed to keep going around in circles with that concept for like 30 minutes until you wrap it up. So
it's boring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's nice that they keep it sort of this mystery, especially since they've run into a lot of bizarre things in space. So
Right.
if anything, they should know that this sounds weird, but we've had some really weird shit happen. So we're going to follow up with this.
Exactly. Exactly. My favorite scene is the one where she begs the captain to go back to the starbase and she says, I know you only have my word to convince you. And then he immediately is like, number one, we're going back to the starbase. And then he says, your word has always been good enough for me. Men, take notes. This is how you handle the situation. Just believe it. If a person, if somebody that you care about is like freaking out about something, like believe them. And he's just being a fantastic friend in that scene. The thing I love the most about that, though, is that when we find out that this is all a created universe from her thoughts, what I love is that all of these people here representing her friends, they're all coming from her subconscious. So like this is how she sees her friends and this is how she sees her relationships with them. And it's beautiful because like there's also that moment where she and Deanna are in the hallway and she's like, Deanna, I think I'm going crazy. And she's like, no, you're not. You're not going crazy. You're doing your best right now and you're just looking out for your friends and for your crew. Beverly says like, what if we go back to the starbase and then it's nothing and it's just I'm crazy? And Deanna goes, so what? And that's just like, man, that's what a good friend would say. That's exactly what a good friend would do. And that speaks to how Beverly feels about her relationship with Deanna. And that's wonderful.
Obviously, Beverly has a very healthy perspective on her relationships, and everyone's being really supportive, which is nice because if she is questioning herself, you kind of think her perspective, like her made up universe, would be projecting that somehow subconsciously into the situation.
Right.
But again,
like
I'm glad they didn't go that
way.
way.
Her friendships is what like keeps her sane in this new fake universe that she's stuck in or something. It's like those are the things that like keep her from like going totally bonkers and feeling gaslit or whatever.
One of my favorite disappearances is when it's just her and Picard and she is with him on the bridge and is like, well, I'm going to say something that I've been wanting to say for a long time. You know, Jean-Luc, you and I have known each other for a long time. And she looks down for a minute to mess with one of the control panels. And when she looks up, he's gone. And she just sort of leans forward in her seat and doesn't say anything. It's not like a big reaction. You can just see the gears in her head working and the way Gates McFadden is kind of like the quick eye movement. You can tell she's trying to like hold it together and try to figure out what to do next. And that's one of my favorite sort of reactions.
Oh, I love it. And it also like plays on all of our heartstrings because everyone's like, man, Picard and Crusher belong together. And she has this
foiled
moment,
again.
Foiled again. It's never going to happen, you guys.
I actually remember reading that they on purpose, I mean, I know that in All Good Things, they supposedly were married and divorced, but I guess they purposely wanted to make sure Picard and Beverly never really got together because they wanted to keep Picard open to relationships when they got to the movies.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
I know. Which I'm like, fuck that. But
I mean, yeah, whatever. They belong together. Everybody knows it. It's fine. Yeah, so how do you feel about the Traveler?
Oh goodness. So I've never really I don't hate the Traveler, you know, and everything doesn't have to be you absolutely love it or you absolutely hate it. But the Traveler's never really been one of my favorite characters. I'm just kind of indifferent to it. He's so tied to Wesley too.
Yeah.
That might be one of the reasons he's just very like, oh, Wesley, you have the ability. And
it just feels very, very fantasy to me. It just feels very Star Wars to me. Like,
yeah, you were describing it as space magic.
Yeah, it's like he's Obi-Wan, you know, like it's I don't care for it. I do know that the actor who plays the Traveler, Eric Menyuk, I think it's pronounced. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I know that he was in the final round for auditions for Data, and he didn't get it, obviously.
Yeah.
So this is his consolation prize. 3 episodes where he plays this weird, large-handed wise
Squishy hands.
sage.
Squishy hands.
Squishy hands, wise sage man.
And space pajamas onesie thing.
Right.
He's very comfortable
Yes.
in his travels.
Yes. I would totally wear that like onesie sweater that he wears. It's just like a big winter sweater turtleneck.
Yeah, it's
that, like,
really
your
thick.
grandma knitted for you. It's fine. I mean, it doesn't feel science fiction-y. It's just like, just close your eyes, Wesley, and don't look at what you're doing, and then your arms will start to disappear. And
see the numbers.
Yeah.
That's the line, right?
God, no. And like, I'm not gonna say that like it isn't kind of like cool to think about the possibility of other species in the universe who experience space and time and reality in a different way than we do, because of course that's probably the truth. But like the way that this is presented is so Deus Ex Machina, where he just like comes in and fixes it. It bothers me because like we don't even need him. Like Wesley could have figured this out on his own, and it could have just been like more of about like a connection that Beverly and Wesley have together, and have it be like a family thing, and then leave the Mr. Squishy Hands pants sweater pants out of it.
Sorry, I love these names. Mr. Squishy Sweater Pants. Who are the ladies talking about? Yeah, no, for me, I like this episode, and my enjoyment goes down a notch once the Traveler's introduced.
Yeah.
Not because of that character per se, but because I did think it was sort of unnecessary for the episode and kind of a weird turn, because I do feel like this is a Beverly episode, and then once the Traveler comes, it suddenly becomes more of a Wesley episode, and I feel like it's a bit of a distraction from what's going on.
Absolutely.
And it's also a little bit of, you're talking before about how it's a little bit of like a trope of advanced species and just being like, well, as humans, you're not advanced enough to understand or know. So it's just, you know, what we realize is just that there was so many different ways they could have wrapped up this episode that it was just unnecessary to bring the Traveler in and sort of he comes in and he fixes everything with his squishy hand magic. Because
with his magic full body sweater.
Yeah, yes. Because we thought of like, okay, yeah, maybe it's just Wesley, or maybe it's Wesley and LaForge. Maybe when they did go to the space station, it's somebody else boarded that was related to what they're doing, and we find out when we flash back to the real world that he's helping Wesley and LaForge. Like, there's so many ways they could have just tweaked the script a little bit so that we didn't have that. One of my favorite points we brought up last time we recorded this episode was just that even though they're kind of doing their thing on their side, in Beverly's little made up world in the bubble, really the twist is when she realizes she's the one who's stuck, and this vortex that she's been avoiding because she thinks it's the enemy, she thinks it's a problem, she realizes that's the solution, and I need to jump into it next time I see it. And it's a little, even though it's based in logic and it's a puzzle, she's figured it out, it is sort of like a leap of faith. And so that's really what the solution is. Kind of not see the numbers with Wesley, but the fact that Beverly realizes what's going on and that she's going to make that jump. Because if she doesn't, she's dead.
Yes, she saves herself. We don't need the Traveler. Bev saves herself. Like, also, all the time leading up to her figuring it out, like when she's going through the motions of figuring it out, it's so fucking lovely. Like when she's arguing with the computer and she's like, I wasn't talking to you. And when she's like, what is that one moment where she's like, computer, what is the nature of the universe? And the computer says, what does the computer say? The universe is a spheroid region 705 meters in diameter. It's so
yes, and I've
funny.
seen so many magnets, memes, shirts with the quote of, if there's nothing wrong with me, maybe there's something wrong with the universe.
Right. But
so
like
yeah,
her just like talking herself through the whole thing, her having like moments where she's like, read the crew manifest, and then, do I have the necessary skills to actually fly this starship? And the computer's like, that information is not available. And she's like, okay. Like, it's wonderful to like watch an intelligent person go through the motions of figuring out something really difficult, and she just does such a great job at it. It just makes me love that character more. It makes me love Gates, obviously. Everything makes me love Gates. But, like, this episode just, like, solidifies for me, like, Beverly Crusher is fucking awesome.
And she did her own stunts.
Dude, that part where
she
she's
hung
like
from that chair. I think the chair technically she's hanging from the ceiling in that shot.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it.
But that's kind of fun when she's, avoiding getting sucked in before she realizes what's going on. That's actually Gates McFadden, like, holding onto a chair from the ceiling and doing all that.
I fucking love it. They did so much with a bottle episode. Like, they don't ever leave the ship. Like, there aren't any special sets. They're not on location anywhere. They're just, like, on the set for the Enterprise, and it's totally wonderful. It doesn't feel like a bottle episode.
Yeah.
Where most of the scenes are with one person. Well, anyway, I don't know. Do you have more things to say about this?
I think the only thing was I did watch this episode with Keith, my husband, who knows you very well, and his only contribution to the viewing was that when the doctor, what's the doctor's name again? Her mentor?
Oh, Dr. Dalen Quace.
When he shows up on the transporter pad, Keith just went, diabetes. And it was like, I'm writing that down right now.
Oh my God, he does look like Wilford Brimley a little bit.
A little bit.
Oh,
so
he
that
really
was
does.
That was just a fun moment.
Yeah, basically, this is one of those episodes that I watch when I'm feeling like kind of hopeless, because it really is also like an underdog figuring it out and having like an aha moment. That's something that I like to watch when I'm sad. Like, I made Dan watch My Cousin Vinny with me on my birthday because I was like, I need a win. I need to watch something where somebody is not supposed to win and then they win because they worked really hard. Like, I need to watch like Mighty Ducks.
Oh boy.
I need like a cheesy ass win where I can like feel good in my heart. And this feels like that because she's like going through all the steps. She thinks about it really hard. She uses her brain. And then she does it, and it's like, yay, and it's a happy ending, We
found a solution, like we figured it out, and the viewer is kind of along for the ride. It's not like we already know what's going on, and we're just waiting for the character to catch up with it.
Yeah.
I have no patience for that, and it's a nice escape.
Absolutely, and I get to hang out with my friend Gates.
Exactly,
McFadden. My best friend in the world, Gates McFadden. She doesn't know it yet. But we're best friends, and we're going to have a nice conversation about how she danced with David Bowie.
That's right. As part of the Labyrinth, right?
Yeah, she choreographed the Labyrinth, you guys. Just, like, look up Gates McFadden, Cheryl McFadden. She goes by Cheryl McFadden when she's choreographing, and she goes by Gates when she's acting. But, like, just look up the shit that this woman does, because she is prolific, and she is multi-talented and multifaceted, and just a delight of a person.
I agree. Well, should we talk about my friend that I invited to the party?
Let's talk about your best friend.
Oh my gosh.
Your best friend,
More than
Andrew Robinson.
Oh, yes. So I picked The Wire from Deep Space Nine. I know it's season 2 later. And,
episode 22.
I was going to say, Larissa is much better at being on the ball about what episode it is. I'm just like, it's late season 2.
I'm like, just in case you want to watch these episodes, I like to like tell you which episode of which season it is. Because like maybe somebody will listen to this and be like, oh, hell yeah, I forgot about that. Or be like, I'm so into that idea. I want to look it up. Now you can. Season 2, episode 22 of DS9. Boom,
there you go. And I have a little bit of a backstory.
Oh, yeah.
About so many 90s things coming.
Right.
So I have a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of context for my appreciation for this episode. And that is, first of all, Deep Space Nine, I saw it much later than TNG. TNG I saw when it was already kind of starting to do, reruns and syndication in the early 90s and stuff. And Deep Space Nine, I didn't really get into my late 20s, mid to late 20s. I was watching Battlestar Galactica, the reboot,
Yeah.
with my then boyfriend. And we were enjoying it. It wasn't completely done, but we were binging what had been released. And my boyfriend, who at the time was also really a big Star Trek fan, said, well, if you like this and you like TNG, you really should watch Deep Space Nine. It has, Ronald D. Moore was in charge of the Battlestar Galactica reboot. He has a history in Star Trek, started on TNG, moved up to Deep Space Nine with being kind of a big component of that show, along with, again, going to names.
Yeah,
you mentioned him.
Ira Stephen Bear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I was encouraged to watch it, and at the time I was like, sure, just give me more. And so, believe it or not, the first episode that I saw of Deep Space Nine was In the Pale Moonlight, which is later in the show.
Yeah.
And definitely one that's very much involved with the Dominion War, and not a bottle show, as you were saying.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's because my boyfriend said, you might have a few questions, but the reason I'm showing you this episode is because I want you to see how good it can get, because we're going to have to slog through a few early seasons. And I think we can all agree that every Star Trek show kind of has like choppy earlier seasons. There's some good ones, but it's a little rocky.
Well, there's the hair test for three of them. There's the hair test. There's the Riker grows the beard, and then the show gets good. There's Avery Brooks shaves his head and grows the goatee, and then the show gets good. And then there's Janeway gets rid of her Jane Austen bun on top of her head and gets.
Isn't it called the bun of steel? That's what I've always heard it called.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And once again, we're talking about Star Trek hair.
Yeah, Star Trek hair. There's going to be an episode. There's going to be an episode on the hair. But when Janeway gets the bob, then it gets better. So, I mean,
yeah. So In the Pale Moonlight, though, has Garak is a big component of it, and I really like the show, but I especially was intrigued by his character. I was just like, who is this gray man of mystery? So when we started, I was just like so eager to get into more Garak. And The Wire is, even though we have appearances of Garak before this, The Wire is really like a meaty first huge episode we have where it has him and it's also about him.
Yeah, let's get a little synopsis going.
Yeah, so I think I can do this pretty quickly. So basically what happens is we're on Deep Space Nine. Bashir and Garak are having one of their lunches together. Garak starts wincing in pain, and Bashir becomes very suspicious. It comes to light that Garak has a device in his brain that is malfunctioning. It
makes him unable to wait for a table at a restaurant. Sorry.
Right. Yes.
Kidding. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
He suggests that they go to the Klingon restaurant, or Bashir does, and I don't think we ever get to see this Klingon restaurant, by the way, in Deep Space Nine.
Maybe like
one in my
time.
notes.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we ever go there? But yes, so it turns out that he has a device in his brain that was put there by the intelligence agency of the Obsidian Order on Cardassia Prime, and that he used to be a member of this agency. So dun dun dun. And it was put there to protect him against any sort of torture. If he were to be tortured and have pain inflicted on him, it would instead trigger pleasure and get him out of a torture situation. Because he is so depressed about his exile in Deep Space Nine, though, he has permanently put it on, which it was never intended for long-term use. He's had it on for 2 years straight, and it is starting to malfunction. Which, by the way, is a side note that I kind of always made me wonder if he was in a situation where he was getting tortured and he was using this device, like would he just eventually orgasm? That's just where my weird brain goes.
Oh my God.
I'm just...
Is there
like,
fanfic about that? There's got to be fanfic.
Oh my
about
gosh,
that.
there has to be. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh my God.
So basically, the whole episode largely is about this withdrawal that Garak is going through, where he's going through the withdrawal, this device not working anymore. He's not getting the artificial endorphins flooded through his system, and Bashir is helping him through it. They also have the challenge that the computers have been wiped of all the medical files for Cardassians. So they're running out of time to save Garak. And
it's going to take Miles, what does he say, like 2 to 3 weeks?
Something like that.
I was like, no way, Miles.
And so Bashir, it ends with Bashir having to go visit an Auburn who is the so-called retired leader of the Obsidian Order, to get the information he needs to save Garak's life.
Paul Dooley.
In time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's pretty much just, this episode is a lot of talking. I mean, we see Tane's home for the last 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah.
But
it's really like a play. It really feels like a play.
Yes. And so it's an episode where there's just a lot of talking, and there's a lot of character development for Garak, and then also the relationship between Garak and Bashir. And it's one of those episodes I think Star Trek does really well when it's more character based, just like I think with Remember Me, they do a really good job of just the sci-fi mystery ones.
Totally. This is some spy drama shit. And it's so fucking fun.
It is. And Andrew Robinson is just such a great actor.
Ugh,
he actually
is wonderful.
Yes. And oh my gosh. I mean, all the actors that are involved with Star Trek are fine, but then you have those that are just, they're the big leagues. And Andrew Robinson is known for Dirty Harry. We're talking about how he is in Hellraiser.
He's the only reason I watched all of Hellraiser. I don't need to see that movie ever again.
But he is a national treasure, and he actually is retired now from USC's Masters of Acting program in California, where coincidentally Gates McFadden teaches as adjunct. So that's kind of like a fun connection between our two episodes.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love it.
But basically he's got acting chops, and this is an episode where they really do wind him up and let him go. And he has some beautiful acting in this episode. And one of the things I've always loved about Andrew Robinson is that when he worked with what the writers were giving him to give his lines so much subtext. With Garak, nothing is as it seems, and he might say one thing, but the way he uses his voice and the way he uses his whole face and his whole body when he's acting,
even with all of this intense makeup on, he's still the Cardassian makeup is a big prosthetic. It's not like the Bajoran nose bridge, you don't have your whole face to work with. You have stuff all over your face. Mm-hmm. And he is still he still can give that weird smile where you're like, I don't even know what he's thinking right now. I'm scared. His little tiny smile, how he can squint his eyes a little bit. He still has all that nuance underneath all of that makeup.
And it's still very subtle, because you're right, because it's not just makeup and prosthetics. I mean, he has a wig. The clothes are fabric upholstery, so that to some degree, has to restrict him too, his body.
Absolutely.
But that's the wonderful thing about Garak, like you said, it's so subtle. And the wonderful thing about Garak is you don't trust him, but he's so charming and so seductive in a way that you kind of just, you're like, I don't even care.
Yes, because he's fascinating.
Kill me, but I'll hang out with you, sure. I don't envy any of the actors who have to go toe to toe with Andrew Robinson, because I feel like,
for real,
he acts circles around people.
He really does. He steals the show.
He does.
You cannot take your eyes off this man. It's amazing. And Alexander Siddig does a great job in this episode.
Oh yeah, he's fine.
But he's no Andrew Robinson.
Right.
And this
when
is
Garak's all up in his face.
Right. And this is honestly one of the first episodes for me that I'm like, okay, Bashir's not a obnoxious, hormones raging teenage boy that's just chasing every woman around the space station. The first couple of seasons of DS9, they're still trying to figure out what to do with him. And he's just this wide-eyed, baby deer that's obsessed with Jadzia. And you're just like, oh my God, shut up. But this episode, they give him something to do. There's no, people could argue with this. There's no sexual tension between him and Garak. Didn't you tell me that somebody else was supposed to be in that part?
Yes.
It was supposed to be someone else, and then it was supposed to be a woman, and I feel like it wouldn't have been as
it was supposed
strong.
To be Kira.
Ah.
Yeah. So in the episode we just did with the Picard 1 through 5 episode, I mentioned that there was an episode where Kira was supposed to have a drug addiction withdrawal storyline where she was getting over stimulants from being in the Resistance, and The Wire is supposed to be that episode. They originally had Kira getting off of those drugs, but they decided against it. Which, if you want to hear all that, you can listen to the previous episode.
Yeah.
But instead, they switched it to Garak, which I think makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
And it's great because not only the points you brought up about, just putting Bashir with Garak and kind of their relationship, because this, as Garak starts to lose control, as the withdrawal symptoms get worse and worse, he's usually such a controlled character. And when he starts to get kind of raw and more emotional and vulnerable, he starts to really push back at Bashir in several different ways. He tells Bashir like different stories about why he got kicked out of the Obsidian Order and why he's in exile. So it's a really nice episode between both of them as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I love their weird friendship.
Yeah, they're great.
I know there's a lot of speculation about like with fans, because like Garak was supposed to be a gay character, but they didn't like.
Yeah, and that was established in the recent documentary.
Yeah,
I know you were saying, I haven't seen it, but you have, and I've definitely read about it. Where
yeah, like Ira Stephen Bear said, like Garak is supposed to be gay, but they didn't come out and actually say it. There was, studio executives and people that were upset about pushing the envelope too far, and they didn't go there. And Ira Stephen Bear says it's actually one of his greatest regrets regarding DS9 that they didn't actually just like come out and say that Garak was gay.
Yeah, and didn't commit to it.
Yeah, didn't actually like go all the way with it.
And Andrew Robinson has also gone on the record for many years saying, like, the very first episode where Garak was just supposed to be a one-time character, he wanted to play Garak as omnisexual because he's like, it's an alien, who knows? And he says
Andrew Robinson, I love you.
and he says, yeah, I kind of played the first episode like I maybe was a little attracted to Bashir, but then they said, okay, you need to stop that, and he kind of just shelved that for,
yeah.
In The Wire and in The Pale Moonlight, there are scenes in each episode where Andrew J. Robinson goes flying over a table. In The Wire, it's him getting mad at Bashir, and he just takes Bashir and they go flying over a table in his quarters. There's, glass and things breaking everywhere. And then in The Pale Moonlight, it ends with another great Garak monologue. And that whole scene starts off because Cisco comes in, he's pissed at Garak, and he just like uppercuts Garak in his tailor shop. And again, Garak goes flying across the table. And after a couple of viewings, I had this thought of, you don't see a lot of Star Trek scripts calling for characters to get just, launched over furniture or anything like that. Like maybe a few kicks and action thing here and there. And I just thought with his movie experience, I thought this has to be Andrew Robinson's doing somehow. Like, it's got to be him saying, what if we did this? And sure enough, I want to say at the end of last year, I just happened to stumble upon an interview of him from when he was doing Dirty Harry. And sure enough, like in the first 2 minutes, he mentions talking to the director about the scene where his character, he's the big baddie in it. And Clint Eastwood is, Dirty Harry. He shoots Andrew Robinson's character on a football field. And so the interview shows Andrew Robinson going, so I talked to the director and I said, well, what if when I get shot, I do a front somersault as if like I was an animal that just got wounded? And I thought, yes, that's all I need to hear. This to me in my heart proves that Andrew Robinson is the one saying, what if I grab Bashir and we just go flying across the table? Or what if I get launched across, my tailor shop?
Oh my God. Like 100%, you're right. Like, no question, that was totally his idea.
I feel pretty good about that theory.
I think you nailed it. I think you got it. Dude, Andrew Robinson, man, MVP.
Yes.
For real. This guy, I mean, he really gets to show like such a huge range, starting with him doing a stunt and like physical acting like that, like getting launched over a table, but then also like the like small moments and the big moment. He just has such a wide range of emotional output in this episode. It's,
oh yeah, I mean, at one point he's drunk.
Oh my God, the drunk part! I love that part.
Give me back my bottle. We get drunk Garak. We get crying Garak. We get pissed off Garak. We just get so many different emotions. It's great.
Oh my God, drunk Garak! I loved drunk Garak. We get to see Garak drinking. They say it's Kanar, but it's blue.
They kind of changed it throughout the season before committing. Yeah, you pointed out that it's like bright blue in this episode.
It looks like Gatorade Frost.
Exactly. We know what that tastes like from our first episode.
Oh, can we talk about Paul Dooley, though?
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about Payne is who Larissa's referring to. Which do you want to talk a little bit about who Paul Dooley is in case some people aren't familiar with him?
You know who Paul Dooley is. Even if
Right.
even if you don't know this name, Paul Dooley, you know him. He's usually like the dad character, the like very sweet, like well-meaning dad character that might be a little like absent-minded or something. I know him at like he was the dad in what's that movie? Runaway Bride.
And see, I've never seen that, but I know him as the dad from 16
Candles.
Yeah, he's been in tons of stuff, but when I look at what he's done, I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Yes, he's also been in a few Christopher Guest movies as well. He was in Waiting for Guffman and A Mighty Wind. He's just like a very like sweet-faced man, and him in this part is just wonderful because it makes it so much scarier when he's like the scary guy.
He's really great in this role, and he again, just like Garak, Tane was supposed to be just he was written with.
Oh my God, what? I'm sorry, I'm seeing this thing. I'm on his Wikipedia page, and he was on an episode of The Golden Girls where he played Isaac Newton. What? Okay, I need to watch that.
I was gonna say we need to find that
immediately.
Screenshot of that is going on our Instagram too. Yeah, the wonderful thing about Paul Dooley as Tane is that it's another instance where Tane was supposed to just be a one-time character in this episode, and Paul Dooley did such an amazing job that they brought him back for a handful of episodes in Deep Space Nine. And so at the very end, Bashir just, like I said, he pops into Tane's home where he's retired, and Tane comes around the corner, and Paul Dooley is an older gentleman. He's still alive, by the way. He's in his early 90s.
Oh my God.
So he comes in as if he's like Bashir's college friend's dad who's seeing him at the lake house for spring break, and has this sort of warmth as if he's like, oh, hello, Bashir. Like, look, can I get you a sandwich or a beer? And he's
Which
wearing
is so Paul Dooley.
Yes. And he feels like he should be this older retired Cardassian. He even has this wonderful tweed jacket. And one of the things I love is that apparently in all the TNG shows, other alien races have discovered warp drive and tweed.
No one wears blue jeans anymore or T-shirts, but we got still tweed. Have tweed.
So he comes around the corner, and he's very he has a lot of hospitality. He's also very charismatic, just like Garak, and he offers Bashir Tarkalian tea, which is significant because earlier in the episode, when Odo is trying to explain to Bashir who the Obsidian Order is, he mentions that a Cardassian family can't sit down without the Obsidian Order documenting what and when they ate, and just to show like how intense they are as far as gathering information. So when this tea is offered to Bashir, Bashir sort of happily exclaims like, oh, I drink that all the time. And you see this look on his face that shows that he realizes, oh my gosh, Odo's right. And it's this great moment because, again, with the sort of idea of subtext and duality, what Tane is doing is he's being very charming and hospitable, but it's also a threat. It's also him saying, don't be fooled. I have a lot of power and you want to be careful with me. But they also have this dance back and forth where he does seem like such a warm character. And I think that's one of the great things about Tane versus Garak is that if Tane is supposed to be the advanced Pokemon version of Garak, one of the things that Tane has that Garak doesn't is this sense of warmth. Like Garak is very charming
Yeah.
and very sneaky, but Tane actually has mastered this sense of warmth that is very disarming for people he's talking to. So,
Yes.
at one point Bashir even says, "Oh, thank you for saving his life," and Tane says, I'm not doing it to be nice. I'm not doing him any favors. I want Garak to live a long, miserable life in exile on Deep Space Nine. And at one point, Bashir, who's, like you were saying, kind of a cocky character, kind of mouths off to Tane. And Tane, you can tell his tone switches, and he says, like, we better run along now. And it just kind of sends shivers up your spine because Paul Dooley has this great delivery of being very dad-like, but when you cross him and he changes tone, it definitely is a little alarming.
Yeah, he goes from like a little league coach to like mob dad.
Right. So props to Paul Dooley. Again, his role was extended into some great episodes for later in Deep Space Nine.
And then he actually ends up being the dad.
Yeah, and then you kind of like wonder where the truths are and what things haven't been revealed to us. And later in the season you find out that Tane is actually Garak's father.
I love that turn. It's so good. But that's it for a different time. That's it for a different
Neela,
episode.
his mother. Which,
oh my god.
Yeah. So poor Garak. Like,
poor Garak.
It works out for him in the end, but still, like he just has a lot of nice twists and turns.
Yeah. Oh, also, here's the thing I wanted to say. Bashir is being not only a good doctor, but also a really good friend in this episode. Laura knows that I love when people are good friends to people.
I know. You're like the friendship police.
You're
like,
love it.
Good friend alert.
Yes. Like, Deanna is a good friend. Picard is a good friend. Like, but for real, like, Bashir he's not required to go out of his way, like, as Garak's friend. Because, like, honestly, at this point in the series, they're kind of acquaintances that eat a meal together sometimes. Like, this is the thing that makes them friends.
And that's a great way of putting it, because they're kind of a great foil to each other, because Garak has a lot of seediness going on, a lot of unsavory.
And a lot of secrets.
Yes. And Bashir is very positive. I remember reading somewhere that he was supposed to be sort of the TNG-esque character as far as his positivity and optimism. And he is. Like, when he first comes in, he's like, I'm a young doctor, and I'm going to go and do frontier medicine, and I'm going to make a difference. And
I'm going to say a lot of stuff that's going to offend a lot of people.
And Garak is pretty much like the opposite of him, where he represents all that is unsavory.
Yes.
And morally gray.
And he's like been through the ringer. He's already had so many experiences. He's just like, he does not have time for anything. And Julian is so green, and he's like straight out of the academy, and he's like, the world is my oyster. And Garak's like, so, that oyster is poisonous.
And Bashir is very naive until he kind of gets some scrapes and bruises, so to speak. But one of the things that's great about this episode is that you kind of pointed out before that Garak challenges him as a doctor, as both and Bashir is unwavering, just like Crusher was with Hugh or other things we talked about, where Bashir sees Garak as a patient, and he says, I don't care what you've done, I am going to treat you. And Garak pushes back at him saying, you should know who you're treating. And that's when he starts telling all these kind of half-truths about who he was in the Obsidian Order. And you can tell that Bashir, even though he's still going to do his job, he is a little disturbed by what he's hearing.
Oh, yeah.
And then Garak also challenges Bashir as a so-called friend and saying, we're not friends. We have lunch sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like we're acquaintances. Like that doesn't
like
make
he's trying to push him away by hurting his feelings.
Yeah.
And he knows, like, this is a this is basically a child, and I'm going to try to push him hard enough that he doesn't want to come back. And it turns out then that Julian is much more resilient than Garak thought he was, which is a very nice moment for Julian's character, because, again, so many hormones. He just
Yeah, it kind of gives Bashir's character a little bit more meat on his bones.
absolutely.
I mean, if Bashir has
Not
two
physical meat, because
relationships,
that guy's still very skinny.
Oh my God.
He's
Yeah,
so skinny.
When they do the Ryza episode for Deep Space Nine, I was just very happy to see that Bashir's arms are about the same as mine. We have the same upper body strength with that tank top he's wearing.
He's so skinny.
But I felt really
He's a
good. I
little
was like,
toothpick.
you be body positive.
Yes.
I'm going to show my arms more too.
We can do this.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's like Bashir and Miles, the other great relationship Bashir has is really Bashir and Garak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because his relationship with Miles is just, they're bros, you know? Like, it's not super complex.
I want to say they're really, it's supposed to be about class, even though Star Trek humans aren't really supposed to have that anymore. But, you know, like Miles is supposed to be kind of like the blue collar worker guy, and then Bashir is the genetically enhanced, you know, superhuman.
It's more of a conventional male friendship, I would say. You know?
I would agree with that.
But Julian and Garak is like totally different than that. Like they don't like talk about their feelings the way that like Miles and Julian would. They don't like go hang out on purpose. Like Garak just like follows Julian into the holodeck without permission.
Well, Julian, and the truth is, like, I think even though Garak introduces himself to Bashir, I think Bashir, again, like I was saying, becomes very intrigued with Garak. And you know, he's convinced that Garak isn't all he seems, that he's not a simple tailor.
Yeah.
So he kind of has this mission that he's going to figure out the mystery of Garak. And he's kind of giddy about that. Bashir just like can't help himself. He wants to figure out what Garak's all about. So he keeps having lunch with him.
And that does like solidify a thing about Julian too, about that he is so curious. This is one of the reasons he is a doctor, because he's curious. He's a scientist. He's interested in things. So it makes sense that he would be fascinated by somebody like Garak, or fascinated by somebody like Dax.
Oh yeah,
you know, that makes sense to me. But just like once he starts leaving her alone, I'm like, finally. Yeah, man, this is like peak DS9 right here. Like there is nothing wrong with this episode. This episode is like start to finish great, and for me this is like an escape situation.
It's funny because I mean it is an intense episode. It's about, you know, basically addiction withdrawal, and there's definitely some
spies, like basically a scarier Tal Shiar. Like it's some that's some intense shit. Like the Cardassians are intense. Like
they're so good though.
Always a lot. There's like fucking drama queens. There are no chill Cardassians. They're all like freaking out all the time. They're all, you know, a lot.
Yeah.
But apparently their literature is really boring.
Really predictable.
Yes. Same story over and over and over again.
It's wonderful because it almost does again remind me of a play where this episode is bookended. It opens and closes with these lunches, this ritual that Bashir and Garak have.
Mm-hmm.
And in both cases, they are talking about Cardassian literature and going into it. So it's a really nice kind of way to wrap up the episode in a little bow.
Yes.
And again, this is an episode, I think, where, I mean, hell, if I saw In the Pale Moonlight and I was okay and I'd never seen any Deep Space Nine, you can definitely watch The Wire. So again, if it's been a long time and you're inspired to go back, or if you just haven't seen it before, this is an episode you could see. And then kind of like my introduction to Deep Space Nine, just have someone tell you, you know, watch this episode. It's really good. It'll show you how good it can be. And then go where you may.
Right. Like if you're a like diehard TOS fan, like, and have never seen DS9, you might be able to get into DS9 through this episode.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea sometimes of if you could only show one episode to a friend or family member, to have them get a taste of what the series is. Like, what would that be?
Yeah, we need to do a series on that. Hopefully we'll get that going when we can actually see each other again.
I know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So yeah, we would love to hear if you're a super huge Trekkie like us, we would love to hear what your go-to Star Trek self-care episodes are. What episodes make you feel the warm fuzzies inside for your favorite characters? What episodes are able to like take you out of this bonkers world that we currently live in and forget about the horror for a while? What are the episodes that make you feel like you're working through some of the issues that you're having with the world as it is? Like, I would love to know, because I feel like my episode does two of those things. Like, it comforts me because I get to hang out with my friend Gates McFadden, and also like it kind of helps me like get through some of the feelings I was having about being isolated and separated from the people that I love too. So, it's we all have our different ones that we love. Maybe it's a dumb one.
Oh, exactly. I mean, like I said, my honorable mention, Disasters, is a very, very fun guilty pleasure.
Yeah, totally.
So it might just be something that's really a fun, silly episode.
Right? Maybe it's just the higher, the fewer.
Oh, goodness.
Maybe it's Barclay.
Barclay. That's a good one too.
Barclay
also,
in the holodeck with all of his friends.
What's the Deep Space Nine one where all the tribbles? Is it tribble and it's
Trials and Tribulations?
Yes, thank you. Which is not only like a fun one, but actually I didn't realize that one gets on so many best of Deep Space Nine lists.
Oh yeah, that's an intense one. I love that like Dax thinks that Spock is hot. That's my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So send us your some of your favorites and we'll watch them. Man, I mean, it's a crazy world out there, and it is really nice to just disappear into a franchise like Star Trek, especially because there is so much Star Trek on, like all the Star Trek is on the internet, and you can watch all of it. It's like thousands of hours of entertainment.
It is. And we should mention right now, if you haven't noticed, CBS All Access is offering, last time I checked, it was a free month. I don't know if they've changed it.
Free month.
So, free month. So if you want to get on and also watch Picard, watch Discovery, or any of the other little Star Trek things they have up there, you can do that as well.
Yeah. Or just like go back and watch. I just finished rewatching Enterprise.
Oh, man.
Dude, we're going to talk about Faith of the Heart
at
some point. It's going to happen because I've got faith. I mean, we'll go there. Don't you worry, everyone.
Oh boy.
We're going to talk about Diane Warren on this podcast. If it's the last thing I do. Oh, God.
So, all right, guys. Thanks for coming down the wormhole with us. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time, you guys. I got faith to the heart. Going where my heart will take me.
I'm not going to make it.
Find us in the collective at intothewormhole.show, on Instagram at intothewormhole.podcast. Into the Wormhole is brought to you by We Own This Town.
Gates, come on the show.
We love Gates. We love you, Gates. Gates, we love you.
Come down the wormhole.
Come down the wormhole with us, Gates. Please. 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 Please.